Stella's hands were shaking so badly that the surgical needle kept slipping between her fingers. Blood, so much blood, pooled on her kitchen table, dripping onto the white tiles below. The man lying in front of her wasn't breathing right. His chest made a wet, bubbling sound with each breath, like water going down a broken drain. "If you let me die," he whispered in a voice that was both a threat and a prayer, "my men will burn this entire building to find out why." Stella's heart hammered against her ribs. She was a nurse, yes, but not a surgeon. She worked at a small clinic treating colds and giving vaccines to children. She had never done anything like this. Never had to dig a bullet out of someone's chest while 3 men with guns stood in her tiny apartment, watching her every move. The tallest one, the man they called Gene, stepped closer. His shadow fell across the table. "Hurry," he said, his English thick with a Korean accent. "Boss is running out of time." Stella looked down at the wounded man's face. Even pale and sweating with pain, he was handsome in a cold, dangerous way. His eyes, sharp and dark, locked onto hers. Waiting. Judging. Deciding if she was worth keeping alive. She took a deep breath and pushed the needle into his skin. "Where are you watching this from? Drop your country in the comments, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You won't believe what happens next." 3 hours earlier, Stella had been having the worst day of her life. And that was saying something, because Stella had experienced a lot of bad days. She sat on the bus heading home from her shift at Grace Medical Clinic, staring at her phone. The screen showed her bank account, $247.53. In 3 days, her rent was due, $1,200. Her mother's medication, which she had to send money for back home to Nigeria, was another $400. Stella closed her eyes and leaned her head against the cold bus window. She was so tired. She had moved to Seoul 2 years ago, chasing a dream that now felt foolish. She'd seen Korean dramas back in Lagos, beautiful stories about love and second chances. And something in her heart had whispered, "Go there. Start over. Build something new." But Seoul was expensive. Seoul was lonely. And Seoul didn't care about a 26-year-old Nigerian nurse with a degree that barely anyone respected here. She worked 12-hour shifts at the clinic, then took English tutoring jobs in the evenings. On weekends, she cleaned apartments for rich families in Gangnam. Still, it was never enough. Never, ever enough. The bus stopped at her station, a neighborhood called Itaewon, where the rent was cheaper and the buildings were older. Stella climbed the 5 flights of stairs to her apartment because the elevator had been broken for 2 weeks. Her legs ached. Her back hurt. Her stomach growled because she'd skipped lunch again to save money. She unlocked her door and stepped inside, already dreaming of instant noodles and sleep. That's when she heard it. A sound. A groan, low and pained, coming from the stairwell above her floor. Stella froze, her keys still in her hand. Every instinct told her to go inside, lock the door, and pretend she heard nothing. This was survival rule number 1 in any big city. Mind your business. But she was a nurse. And nurses, even exhausted ones with $247.53 in the bank, couldn't ignore sounds like that. She climbed 1 more flight of stairs. The hallway on the 6th floor was darker than hers. 2 of the lights were burned out. In the shadows near the stairwell exit, she saw him. A man slumped against the wall, his expensive black suit soaked with blood. His hand pressed against his side, trying to stop the bleeding, but it wasn't working. Blood ran between his fingers, dark and steady. "Oh my God," Stella whispered. The man's head lifted slowly. His face was twisted in pain, but his eyes, those sharp, dark eyes, focused on her with an intensity that made her step back. "Help me," he said in Korean. Stella's Korean was decent, good enough to get by. She understood him perfectly. I should call an ambulance," she said, already reaching for her phone. "No." His voice cracked like a whip. "No hospital. No police." Stella's hand froze. A cold feeling spread through her chest. "No hospital? No police?" That meant, "Please," the man said again, and this time his voice was softer, almost gentle. "I'll pay you. Whatever you need. Just help me." Stella should have run. She should have called the police anyway and locked herself in her apartment. But she looked at the blood pooling beneath him, and she thought about how she'd taken an oath once, back in nursing school. First, do no harm. And wasn't letting someone bleed to death a kind of harm? Also, and she hated herself for thinking this, he'd said he would pay her. "Can you walk?" she asked. The man nodded, though his face went even paler with the effort. My apartment is 1 floor down. Lean on me. Getting him down the stairs was like dragging a bag of concrete that kept trying to collapse. He was tall, much taller than her, and muscular despite the blood loss. Stella was strong from years of lifting patients at the clinic, but by the time they reached her door, sweat poured down her face. She got him inside and immediately regretted every choice that led to this moment. He collapsed onto her small sofa, breathing hard, leaving blood smears on the cushions she'd bought secondhand 3 months ago. "Okay," Stella said, her voice shaking. "Okay, let me look." She knelt beside him and carefully moved his hand away from the wound. Her professional training kicked in, pushing away the panic. Entry wound on the left side of his abdomen, about 3 inches below his ribs. No exit wound, which meant the bullet was still inside. Moderate bleeding, but not arterial. His color was bad, pale, almost gray, but his breathing was steady enough. "You've been shot," she said, which was obvious, but saying it out loud helped her think. "Very observant," he muttered. Despite everything, Stella almost smiled. "I need to get the bullet out, or you'll get an infection. It might already be too late. You really need a hospital." "No hospital. You could die." "Then I die." He looked at her with those intense eyes. "But not in a hospital. Do you understand?" Stella didn't understand. Not really. But she nodded anyway. She was about to stand up to get her first aid kit when her apartment door burst open. 3 men rushed in, all wearing dark suits, all with the same cold, dangerous look. The first one, the tall one, had a gun in his hand. Stella screamed and threw her hands up. "Boss!" the tall one shouted, lowering his gun when he saw the wounded man on her sofa. The wounded man, apparently Boss, waved a weak hand. "Jean. I'm fine. She's helping me." Jean looked at Stella like she was an insect he was deciding whether to step on. "Who is she?" "A nurse. I think." "Are you a nurse?" he asked her in Korean. "Yes," Stella whispered, her hands still raised. "Yes, I'm a nurse." "See. A nurse." He coughed and blood flecked his lips. That was bad. That meant internal bleeding, maybe a punctured lung. "Boss, we need to get you to Dr. Choi," Jean said urgently. "Dr. Choi is 2 hours away in Busan, and I'll be dead in 1 hour if this bullet stays in me." He looked at Stella. "Can you do it? Can you remove the bullet?" Stella's mind raced. She'd assisted in minor surgeries during her training. She knew the theory. But theory and practice were very different things, especially when 3 armed men were staring at you and your patient was someone who clearly lived in a world where bullets were an occupational hazard. I don't have the right equipment. No anesthesia. I have some lidocaine, but..." "Use whatever you have," Boss said. "Jean, help her." And that's how Stella found herself sterilizing her kitchen table with the bottle of soju she kept for occasional sleepless nights, laying out the limited surgical tools from her nurse's bag, and preparing to perform an operation she was absolutely not qualified to do. Jean and his 2 men, one short and muscular, one thin with glasses, moved her small kitchen table to the center of her living room. They cleared off her laptop and the stack of Korean language textbooks. The thin one with glasses spread out a clean plastic sheet he pulled from nowhere. "You just carry plastic sheets?" Stella asked, her voice high with stress. Glasses didn't answer. "They're prepared for many things," Boss said. He was struggling to stand, one hand pressed against his wound. "It's why they're still alive." Jean and the muscular one helped Boss onto the table. He lay back with a grunt of pain, his blood now staining the plastic sheet. Stella washed her hands 3 times, scrubbing until her skin turned red. She pulled on the latex gloves from her bag with shaking fingers. "Okay," she said, more to herself than anyone else. "Okay, I can do this." She injected the lidocaine around the wound site, using almost her entire supply. It wouldn't be enough to numb everything. Not even close, but it was better than nothing. "This is going to hurt," she told him. The boss actually smiled, though his face was covered in sweat. "Most things in my life hurt." Stella picked up her forceps and scalpel. Her hands were still shaking. Jean moved closer, hovering over her shoulder. His presence was like a wall of threat. "If he dies," Jean said quietly, "you die too." "Jean," Boss said sharply. "Enough." She's scared enough. But Stella barely heard them. She was focused on the wound now, her training finally overriding her fear. She widened the bullet's entry point carefully, blood welling up around the scalpel. She used gauze to soak it up, but it kept coming. "Suction," she muttered. "I need suction." Damn it, I need a real hospital. Keep going, boss said through gritted teeth. Even with the lidocaine, she could see the pain in every line of his face. Stella used her forceps to probe the wound, feeling for the bullet. The human body wasn't like the plastic models in nursing school. Everything was wet and warm and moved in ways you didn't expect. There. She felt it, the hard edge of metal against the tip of her forceps. I've got it, she whispered. She adjusted her grip, trying to get the forceps around the bullet without pushing it deeper. Sweat dripped down her forehead into her eyes. Jean reached over with a towel and wiped her face without a word. Almost, Stella breathed. Almost. The forceps closed around the bullet. She pulled slowly, steadily. It didn't move. She pulled harder. The boss made a sound, a deep, terrible sound of pain, and his hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. His grip was iron-strong despite his blood loss. Don't stop, he gasped. Don't stop. Stella pulled with all her strength. The bullet came free. She held it up, a small piece of deformed metal covered in blood, and for a moment, everyone in the room seemed to exhale at once. But she wasn't done. Not even close. He's still bleeding internally, Stella said, examining the wound. The bullet must have nicked something on the way in. I need to find the bleeder and cauterize it. Cauterize? Jean asked. Burn it closed. I need. She looked around her tiny apartment desperately. I need a metal probe and a lighter. Or a small torch. Anything that gets hot enough. The muscular one disappeared into her kitchen and came back with a metal kebab skewer and her small cooking torch she used for creme brulee. She'd bought it during a brief phase when she thought cooking fancy desserts would make her feel less homesick. Stella sterilized the skewer in boiling water, then heated it with the torch until it glowed red. Hold him down, she said. Jean and the muscular one pressed boss's shoulders flat against the table. Glasses held his legs. Stella inserted the glowing skewer into the wound. The smell of burning flesh filled her apartment. Boss's back arched off the table, his muscles straining against the men holding him down. A sound came from his throat, not quite a scream, but close, that would haunt Stella's dreams for weeks to come. She found the bleeding vessel and touched the hot metal against it. Once. Twice. 3 times. The bleeding slowed. Then stopped. Stella withdrew the skewer, her hands somehow steady now that the worst was over. She flushed the wound with saline, packed it with gauze, and began stitching it closed with quick, neat sutures. By the time she tied off the last stitch and bandaged the wound, Boss had passed out. His breathing was shallow but steady. His color was still terrible, but no worse than before. He needs antibiotics, Stella said, standing up on shaky legs. Strong ones. And 4 fluids. He's lost a lot of blood. I'll get them, Jean said immediately. What else? Stella rattled off a list of medications and supplies. Jean made a phone call in rapid Korean, speaking too fast for her to follow. She cleaned her tools in the sink, watching Boss's blood swirl down the drain with the water. Her entire body felt numb, like she was watching herself from very far away. The thin one with glasses appeared beside her. You did well, he said in careful English. Very well. Who is he? Stella asked quietly. Who are you people? Glasses adjusted his frames and gave her a small, cold smile. You don't need to know that. You only need to know that you saved his life tonight. And he doesn't forget debts. The next 2 hours passed in a strange blur. Jean returned with a bag full of medical supplies, everything she'd asked for and more. Stella set up in 4-line, administered broad-spectrum antibiotics, and monitored Boss's vital signs every 15 minutes. He woke up around midnight, his eyes clearer than before. Water, he said. Stella brought him a glass. He drank it slowly, watching her over the rim. What's your name? He asked in Korean. Stella. Stella Okafor. Stella, he repeated, and somehow made it sound different. I'm Dehun, though most people call me by other names. I don't want to know what names, Stella said quickly. Dehun smiled at that, a real smile that changed his entire face. For a moment, he didn't look like someone who'd been shot. He looked young, maybe early 30s, and almost gentle. Smart, he said. You're very smart, Stella Okafor. Jean appeared from where he'd been standing guard by the door. Boss, the safe house is ready. We should move you. Not yet. I'm tired. Dehun's eyes stayed on Stella. How much do I owe you? Stella's mouth went dry. She thought about her rent, her mother's medication, the electrical bill she'd been putting off. I don't know. What's a bullet removal worth? More than money can measure, Dehun said softly. But we'll start with money. Jean, give her 10 million won. Stella's brain stuttered trying to do the conversion. 10 million won was $8,000? 9,000? That's too much, she whispered. It's not enough. Dehun tried to sit up and winced. Stella immediately moved to help him, adjusting the pillows behind his back. You didn't call the police. You didn't run. You saved my life with a kebab skewer and a creme brulee torch. 10 million won is insulting, really, but it's what I have access to tonight. Jean placed a thick envelope on her coffee table. Stella stared at it. That envelope contained more money than she made in 6 months. It contained her rent, her mother's medication, her electrical bill, her phone bill, her food for the next 3 months. It contained a choice. Take the money and step into whatever dark world these men lived in. Or refuse it and stay clean. Stay safe. Stay poor, but stay by herself. She reached out and picked up the envelope. Thank you, she said quietly. Dehun's smile widened. No, Stella Okafor. Thank you. 20 minutes later, Jean and his men helped Dehun down to a waiting black car. Stella watched from her window as they drove away, the envelope of money heavy in her hands. She should have felt relieved. She should have felt safe now that they were gone. Instead, she felt like she'd just stepped off the edge of a cliff, and she was still waiting to hit the ground. She cleaned her apartment, scrubbing the blood from her kitchen table and floor. She threw away the plastic sheet and the gauze. She sterilized her tools 3 times. By the time she finished, the sun was starting to rise, painting Seoul in shades of gold and pink. Stella finally collapsed onto her sofa, the one still stained with Dehun's blood, and closed her eyes. She woke up 6 hours later to someone pounding on her door. For a terrible moment, she thought it was the police. Someone had seen the blood. Someone had heard her patient's screams. She was going to be arrested for practicing medicine without a license, or worse, as an accessory to whatever crime had gotten Dehun shot in the first place. She opened the door slowly, her heart in her throat. It wasn't the police. It was Jean. Behind him stood 6 men in suits, all carrying boxes. Miss Stella, Jean said with a slight bow. Boss's orders. We're here to deliver your payment. You already paid me, Stella said, confused. That was the emergency payment. Jean gestured, and his men began carrying the boxes inside. This is the real payment. They filled her tiny living room with boxes. 20 of them. Maybe more. When they finally left, Stella stood in the middle of her apartment, surrounded by more boxes than she had furniture. She opened the first one with shaking hands. Money. Stacks and stacks of cash, all in neat bundles. She opened another box. More money. Another. Medical equipment, the kind that cost thousands of dollars. A portable ultrasound machine. Surgical tools that looked like they came from a hospital supply room. Another box. This one had a phone inside. A new smartphone, expensive and sleek. There was a note attached in English. This phone is yours. My number is saved in it. Call me if you need anything. D. Stella's hands were shaking so badly, she almost dropped the phone. She opened more boxes. Clothes. Designer clothes in exactly her size. How did they know her size? Groceries. Expensive imported foods she'd never been able to afford. A new laptop. A television. Bedsheets. Towels. Things she needed and things she didn't, but all expensive. All perfect. The last box was the smallest. Inside was a single piece of paper with an address and a time. Tomorrow, 8 p.m. Come alone. We need to talk about your future. D. Stella sat down on her blood-stained sofa, surrounded by enough money and gifts to change her entire life, and realized something terrifying. She'd saved Dehun's life last night. But what if, in doing so, she'd just sold her own? Stella stood in front of the address Dehun had given her, her heart beating so fast she could feel it in her throat. The building looked normal from the outside. A nice restaurant in Gangnam with soft golden lights in the windows and a valet parking an expensive car. Through the glass doors, she could see people eating, laughing, and drinking wine. It looked safe. Fancy, but safe. So why did Stella feel like she was walking into a trap? She'd spent all of last night and today thinking about running. She could take the money Dehun gave her and disappear. Go to Busan or maybe Japan. Change her name. Start over somewhere else. But something stopped her every time she tried to pack. Curiosity, maybe. Or something darker. The feeling that her old life was already over the moment she'd pulled that bullet from Dehun's chest. Running wouldn't change that. A hostess in a beautiful black dress greeted her immediately. "Miss Stella Okafor?" Stella nodded, surprised the woman knew her name. "This way, please." The hostess led her past the main dining room, past the tables full of rich people eating expensive food, to a door at the back. She knocked twice, then opened it. The room inside was private and quiet. A single table sat in the center, covered with a white cloth and set for 2 people. Candles flickered in the dim light. And there, standing by the window with his back to her, was Dehun. He turned when she entered, and Stella's breath caught. He looked completely different from the dying man on her kitchen table. He wore an expensive black suit that fit him perfectly. His hair was styled. His face had color again. He looked powerful and dangerous, and Stella hated herself for thinking it. Incredibly handsome. "Stella," he said, smiling. "You came. You didn't really give me a choice," Stella replied, trying to sound braver than she felt. "There's always a choice." Dehun gestured to the table. "Please sit. Are you hungry?" Stella was starving. She'd been too nervous to eat all day. But she shook her head. "I don't want food. I want to know why I'm here." Dehun's smile widened, like he appreciated her directness. "Straight to business. I like that." He pulled out a chair for her. "But humor me. Sit. You saved my life, Stella. The least I can do is feed you." Stella sat, mostly because her legs felt shaky. Dehun sat across from her, moving carefully. She noticed him wince slightly when he settled into his chair. "How's your wound?" she asked automatically, her nurse instincts taking over. "Healing. Thanks to you." He poured water into her glass, then his own. "Jean says you did the impossible. Most doctors would have sent me to surgery. You did it with a kebab skewer. I don't recommend it as a medical technique." Dehun laughed, a real, warm laugh that made him look younger. "I won't put it on Yelp." Despite everything, Stella smiled. A server entered quietly, placing dishes on their table. Expensive food, steak, pasta, salad, things Stella recognized from cooking shows but had never actually tasted. The server disappeared without a word. "Eat," Dehun said. "We'll talk after." Stella picked up her fork. The food was delicious, better than anything she'd ever had. But she could barely taste it. Her mind was spinning with questions. Who was this man? What did he want from her? And why did he keep looking at her like she was something valuable he'd just discovered? After they ate, Dehun pushed his plate aside and leaned back in his chair, watching her. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. "No," Stella said. "And I don't want to know." "Liar." His eyes sparkled with amusement. "You're curious. You've been curious since the moment you found me bleeding in your hallway. That's why you helped me. That's why you came tonight." Stella's face burned. He was right, and she hated that he was right. "Fine," she said. "Who are you?" "My name is Park Dehun. I'm the CEO of Biko Trading Company." Stella blinked. That sounded normal. Legal, even. "Biko Trading imports and exports goods throughout Asia," Dehun continued. "Electronics, mostly. Some textiles. We're very successful. Very legitimate." He paused. On paper. There it was. The truth underneath the lie. "And in reality?" Stella asked quietly. "In reality, we trade other things. Things that don't appear on customs forms. Things that powerful people need moved quietly from one place to another." Dehun's voice was calm, like he was discussing the weather. "Sometimes those powerful people disagree with each other. Sometimes those disagreements get violent. That's how I ended up shot in your hallway." Stella's hands were shaking again. She put them in her lap so he wouldn't see. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm about to offer you a job, and you deserve to know what you'd be getting into." "A job?" Stella's mind went blank. "What?" Dehun leaned forward, his eyes intense. "I need a private doctor, Stella. Someone I can trust. Someone who won't ask questions or call the police when my men show up bleeding. Someone skilled enough to handle emergencies." He gestured to his side, where she'd removed the bullet. "Someone like you." "I'm not a doctor," Stella said quickly. "I'm just a nurse. I got lucky that night. I could have killed you. But you didn't. And Jean did research on you after." Dehun pulled out a folder from somewhere and slid it across the table. Stella opened it with numb fingers. Inside were copies of her school records. Her nursing license from Nigeria. Her work history. Her visa status. Even her bank statements, including the pitiful $247.53 she'd had before he gave her the money. You graduated top of your class, Dehun said softly. You worked at Lagos General Hospital for 3 years. Your supervisors said you were the best nurse in the emergency department. You came to Seoul because you wanted a better life, but your Nigerian degree isn't fully recognized here. So you work at a clinic that pays you barely enough to survive, and you send half of what you earn to your mother for her diabetes medication. Stella's eyes stung with tears. Hearing her life summarized like that, hearing how small and desperate it sounded, made something crack inside her chest. You're struggling, Stella, Dehun continued, and you're too proud to ask for help. But I'm offering it. Work for me. Be my private physician. I'll pay you 10 million won a month. Stella's head snapped up. That's more than $70,000 a year. Plus housing. I'll set you up in a nice apartment. Safe, secure, in a good neighborhood. Plus medical supplies, whatever you need. Plus a car and driver. Plus protection. Protection from what? Dehun's expression darkened. From people who might try to hurt you to get to me. This isn't a safe job, Stella. I won't lie to you. But it's a well-paying one. Stella stared at the folder in front of her, her mind racing. 10 million won a month. That was enough to send money to her mother and still have plenty left over. That was enough to save for her future. That was enough to finally breathe. But at what cost? I need time to think, Stella said. Of course. Dehun stood, moving to a cabinet on the wall. He pulled out a briefcase and set it on the table. Take this while you think. Stella opened the briefcase. More money. So much money her brain couldn't even process it. That's 3 months' salary in advance, Dehun said. Call it a signing bonus. Whether you take the job or not, that money is yours. For saving my life. I can't. You can. You will. His voice was firm but not unkind. Stella, you're killing yourself working 3 jobs and barely surviving. Take the money. Pay your rent. Send your mother her medication. Sleep for more than 4 hours a night. And then decide if you want to work for me. Stella closed the briefcase with shaking hands. Why me? You could hire any doctor. Someone with more experience. Someone who doesn't have anything to lose? Dehun sat back down, his eyes locked on hers. That's exactly why I don't want them. Desperate people are loyal, Stella. And you proved that night that you're brave enough to do what needs to be done, even when you're terrified. He reached across the table and took her hand. His palm was warm, calloused. The touch sent electricity up her arm. I trust you, he said softly. I don't trust easily. But I trust you. Stella's throat felt tight. When was the last time anyone had said they trusted her? When was the last time anyone had seen her? Really seen her, beyond just being the struggling foreign nurse. I need 3 days, she whispered. Take 5. Take a week. Dehun released her hand, leaving her skin feeling cold where he'd touched her. Jean will be your contact. His number is in the phone I gave you. Call him when you decide. Jean drove Stella home in a car nicer than any she'd ever been in. He didn't talk much, which she appreciated. Her head was too full of thoughts for conversation. When they pulled up to her building, Jean turned to her. For what it's worth, I think you should take the job. Why? Stella asked. Because the boss is a good man in a bad business. He takes care of the people who work for him. And you. Jean paused, choosing his words carefully. You make him smile. I haven't seen him smile like he did tonight in a very long time. Before Stella could respond, Jean was out of the car, opening her door. She climbed the stairs to her apartment in a daze, the briefcase heavy in her hands. Inside, all of Dehun's gifts still sat in boxes around her living room. Evidence of a life she could have if she just said yes. Stella set the briefcase on her coffee table and opened it one more time, staring at the money inside. She thought about her mother, back in Lagos, rationing her insulin because it was so expensive. She thought about her landlord, who'd threatened to evict her if she was late on rent one more time. She thought about working at the clinic for 12 hours, then tutoring for 3 more, then coming home to her tiny apartment where the elevator was broken and the hot water barely worked. She thought about Dehun's eyes when he'd said, I trust you. Stella was reaching for her phone to call Jean, to say yes, to accept the job and everything that came with it. When someone knocked on her door, Stella froze. It was almost midnight. Who would be knocking at midnight? She moved to the door slowly, looking through the peephole. A woman stood in the hallway. She was Korean, beautiful, and wearing an expensive coat. Her makeup was perfect. Her hair was styled. She looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Who is it? Stella called through the door. My name is Yuna, the woman replied in English. I need to talk to you about Park Dehun. Stella's blood turned to ice. How did this woman know about Dehun? How did she know where Stella lived? I don't know who that is, Stella lied. Yes, you do. You saved his life 3 days ago. He just offered you a job tonight. And if you're smart, you'll refuse it. Yuna's voice was calm but urgent. Please, open the door. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to warn you. Stella's hand hovered over the lock. Every instinct screamed at her not to open the door. But curiosity, that same dangerous curiosity that had made her help Dehun in the first place, made her turn the handle. Yuna stepped inside quickly, looking over her shoulder like she was afraid of being followed. Up close, Stella could see she was older than she'd first appeared. Maybe late 30s. There were fine lines around her eyes, and her hands shook slightly as she closed the door behind her. You have to understand something, Yuna said without preamble. Dehun is very good at making people feel special, making them feel seen. He offered you money and safety and trust, didn't he? Stella said nothing, but her silence was not enough. He's done this before, Yuna continued. The last person who worked as his private doctor was a man named Dr. Kim. Dehun trusted him too, paid him well, protected him. For 2 years, Dr. Kim worked for him. What happened to Dr. Kim? Stella asked, though part of her didn't want to know. Yuna's eyes filled with tears. Dr. Kim was my brother, and 6 months ago he died. Officially, it was a car accident, but I know the truth. She stepped closer to Stella. He saw something he shouldn't have, knew something too dangerous. And Dehun's enemies found him. The room felt colder suddenly. Dehun couldn't protect him, Yuna said. Or wouldn't. I don't know which is worse. But my brother died because he worked for that man. And now Dehun wants you to take his place. Stella's legs felt weak. She sat down on her sofa, the briefcase full of money suddenly feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Why are you telling me this? She whispered. Because you look like a good person. And good people shouldn't die for bad men's wars. Yuna pulled a card from her pocket and pressed it into Stella's hand. That's my number. If you need help getting away from him, if you want to refuse the job but you're scared, call me. I have connections. I can help you disappear. Yuna moved to the door, then paused. One more thing. Dehun told you he trusts you, didn't he? Stella nodded. He said the same thing to my brother. Right before everything fell apart. After Yuna left, Stella sat in her dark apartment for hours, the business card in one hand and her phone in the other. On the phone was Jin's number. 1 call and she'd be rich. Safe. Protected. On the card was Yuna's number. 1 call and she'd be free. Hidden. Gone. Stella looked at the briefcase full of money. At the boxes of gifts. At the expensive phone Dehun had given her. Then she looked at her tiny apartment with its broken elevator and cold water. At her bank statement showing $247.53. At the photo of her mother on her phone, smiling despite her illness. What was the price of safety? What was the cost of comfort? And how much was Stella willing to pay? She was still trying to decide when her phone buzzed. A text message from a number she didn't recognize. There's been an accident. My boss is hurt again. He's asking for you. Come now. Address. Location. Jean. Stella's heart stopped. Another message came through, this one a photo. Dehun, conscious but bleeding, his shirt torn, his face bruised. He was looking at the camera with those intense dark eyes, and even through the photo, Stella could see the pain. He needed her. But was this real? Or was it a test? Was Yuna right about the danger? Or was she lying? Stella stood up, grabbed her medical bag, and made a choice that would change everything. Stella's hands were shaking so badly, she could barely hold her medical bag as the taxi sped through Seoul's dark streets. The address Jean had sent was in Songpagu, a warehouse district where nobody lived and nothing good happened after midnight. Every red light felt like torture. Every turn brought her closer to either saving Dehun's life again, or walking straight into the trap Yuna had warned her about. The driver kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror, clearly concerned about the young foreign woman going to a warehouse district at 1 a.m. But Stella didn't have time to care what he thought. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Jean. Hurry. He's losing blood fast. Then another photo. Dehun's face was paler now, his eyes half closed. The blood on his shirt had spread. Drive faster, Stella told the driver in Korean. Please. The taxi dropped her off in front of a massive metal building with no signs or lights. Just a single door, slightly open, with dim yellow light spilling out. Stella paid the driver and stepped out into the cold night air. The taxi sped away immediately, leaving her alone in the darkness. She should turn around. Call the police. Call Yuna. Do anything except walk through that door. But then she heard it, a groan of pain from inside the warehouse. Dehun's voice. Stella's nurse instincts overrode her fear. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The warehouse was huge and mostly empty, filled with shadows and the smell of metal and oil. In the center, under a single hanging light, she saw them. Dehun sat slumped in a chair, his face bruised, his shirt soaked with blood. Jean stood beside him, along with the muscular man and glasses. They all turned when Stella entered. "Thank God," Jean said. "We didn't think you'd come." Stella ran to Dehun, dropping her medical bag and immediately checking his pulse. Strong. Steady. Too steady for someone who was supposedly losing blood fast. She looked at his shirt. The blood was there, but it wasn't spreading. It wasn't even wet. Her hands moved to his face, checking his pupils, his color, his breathing. Everything was fine. Better than fine. And then Dehun opened his eyes fully and smiled at her. "Hello, Stella," he said softly. Stella stumbled backward, her heart dropping into her stomach. "You're not hurt." "No," Dehun agreed. "I'm not. The blood, the photos." Stella's voice rose with anger and fear. "You lied to me. We needed to see if you'd come," Jean said from behind her. Stella spun around, and her fear turned to ice-cold terror when she saw what Jean was holding. A gun, pointed at her. "What is this?" Stella whispered. "What's happening?" Dehun stood up slowly, with no sign of injury or weakness. He pulled off the bloodied shirt, revealing clean skin underneath. The blood was fake. All of it was fake. "I'm sorry, Stella," Dehun said, and he actually sounded apologetic. "But I had to know." "Know what?" Stella's eyes darted between Dehun and Jin's gun. "That I'm stupid enough to walk into a trap? That you're loyal enough to come when I need you, even when you're scared?" Dehun stepped closer to her. "And that you haven't been talking to people you shouldn't be talking to." Stella's blood turned to ice. "Yuna. They knew about Yuna." "I don't know what you're talking about," Stella said, but her voice shook. "A woman named Yuna came to your apartment tonight," Dehun said. His voice was still soft, but there was steel underneath now. "She told you about Dr. Kim. She gave you her card. She warned you not to work for me." How? How do you know that?" Stella breathed. "Because I had Jean watching your apartment." Dehun's eyes never left her face. "I needed to know if my enemies would try to get to you. And they did. So this," Stella gestured at the warehouse, at Jin's gun, at everything. "This was a test?" "Yes. And if I failed? If I'd called Yuna instead of coming here?" Stella's voice cracked. "Would you have killed me?" The silence that followed was the longest of Stella's life. Finally, Dehun spoke. "Jean, put the gun away." Jean lowered the weapon immediately. Dehun moved closer to Stella, so close she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "I wouldn't have killed you, Stella. But I needed to know whose side you're on." "Mine," he paused. "Or theirs." "I'm not on anyone's side." Stella shouted, her fear finally turning to anger. "I'm just trying to survive. I'm just trying to help my mother. I don't want to be part of your war." "But you already are," Dehun said quietly. "The moment you saved my life, you became part of it. And now my enemies know about you. They know you're important to me. Which means you're in danger whether you work for me or not." Stella felt tears burning in her eyes. "So I have no choice?" "You always have a choice." Dehun reached out and gently wiped a tear from her cheek. The gesture was so tender it made her heart hurt. "But let me tell you the truth. The real truth. Not the story Yuna told you." Dehun gestured to a crate. "Sit. Please." Stella sat, not because she wanted to, but because her legs were shaking too badly to stand. Dehun sat across from her, close enough that their knees almost touched. Jean and the others moved away, giving them privacy. "Dr. Kim was real," Dehun began. "He did work for me for 2 years. And he died 6 months ago. But it wasn't a car accident, and I didn't have him killed." "Then what happened?" Stella asked. "Dr. Kim was stealing from me. Not money, information. He was selling details about my operations to my competitors. Names of my people. Locations of my shipments. Security codes." Dehun's jaw tightened. "Because of him, 3 of my men were killed in an ambush. Good men. Men with families." Stella's chest tightened. "But Yuna said." "Yuna is Dr. Kim's sister, yes. But she doesn't know the truth about her brother. Or maybe she does, and she's lying to protect his memory. Dehun pulled out his phone and showed Stella a video. The video showed Dr. Kim in a car, talking to someone off camera. The audio was clear. Dr. Kim was describing Dehun's security routes, his safe houses, and his weaknesses. He was laughing as he did it. The timestamp showed it was from 7 months ago. He betrayed me, Dehun said softly. And when my competitors didn't need him anymore, they killed him. Made it look like an accident. I didn't order it. I didn't even know it was going to happen until it was done. Stella stared at the phone, her mind reeling. Why are you showing me this? Because I want you to understand what trust means in my world. Dehun turned off his phone and looked at her with those intense eyes. I trusted Dr. Kim. I paid him well. I protected his family. And he sold me out for more money. That betrayal cost 3 lives. It almost cost mine. So you don't trust me, Stella whispered. I want to trust you. But trust is earned, Stella. That's why I tested you tonight. Dehun leaned forward. You came when I called, even though you were scared. Even though Yuna warned you. Even though you could have run. That tells me something important. What does it tell you? That you're either loyal or an excellent actress. His lips curved into a small smile. I'm hoping it's the first one. Stella stood up, anger flooding through her again. I'm not a toy you can test. I'm not a pawn in your war. I'm Dehun. A person who's scared and confused and way out of her depth. I know, Dehun said, standing too. And I'm sorry. Truly. But this is the world I live in. This is the world you stepped into when you saved my life. Then let me step back out, Stella said. Let me walk away. I won't tell anyone about you. I'll forget everything. Just let me go. I can't. Why not? Dehun's expression turned dark. Because Yuna knows about you now. Which means her people know about you. Which means my competitors know about you. They'll come for you, Stella. They'll try to use you to get to me. Or worse, he stopped, his jaw clenching. They'll hurt you just to send me a message. Stella felt cold all over. So what are you saying? I'm saying the safest place for you right now is with me. Under my protection. Working as my doctor. Dehun moved closer, his voice urgent. I know you're angry. I know you're scared. But I can keep you safe, Stella. I can keep your mother safe too. I have people in Lagos. I can have them watching her within 24 hours. You do that? Stella whispered. I'd do anything to protect the people who are loyal to me. Dehun reached out and took her hand. Please, Stella. Trust me. Work for me. Let me keep you safe. Stella looked down at their joined hands. His palm was warm, calloused, and strong. The hand of a man who'd killed people. The hand of a man who'd just terrified her with a fake injury and a gun. But also the hand of a man who was offering her safety. Protection. A way to keep her mother alive. If I say yes, Stella said slowly, I need promises. Real promises. Anything. No more tests. No more lies. If you need to tell me something, you tell me straight. Agreed. I'm a doctor, not a soldier. I won't kill anyone. I won't help you hurt people. I would never ask you to. And if I want out, if this gets too dangerous or too dark, you let me walk away. No consequences. No revenge. Dehun hesitated at that one. For a long moment, he just looked at her, weighing something in his mind. Okay, he finally said. If you want out, I'll let you go. You have my word. Stella took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that would define everything that came next. Then I'll work for you, she said. But Dehun, if you betray me, if you hurt me or my mother. I won't, he interrupted. I swear on the lives of everyone I've ever cared about. I won't betray you, Stella Okafor. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles, a gesture so old-fashioned and intimate it made her breath catch. Welcome to Biko Trading Company, he said with a small smile. Jean drove Stella back to her apartment an hour later. They'd given her a new phone, encrypted, untraceable. They'd scheduled a meeting for tomorrow to discuss her new living arrangements and security protocols. Stella was exhausted, emotionally drained, but also strangely relieved. She'd made her choice. For better or worse, she was committed now. She climbed the stairs to her apartment, her feet heavy with tiredness. She unlocked her door and stepped inside. The smell hit her first. Perfume. Expensive perfume that didn't belong to her. Stella's hand flew to the light switch. The lights came on, revealing her small living room. And sitting on her blood-stained sofa, calm as anything, was Yuna. Hello again, Stella, Yuna said with a cold smile. We need to have another conversation. A truthful one this time. Before Stella could scream, before she could run, two men stepped out from her bedroom. Big men with hard faces and harder eyes. "Sit down," Yuna said, gesturing to a chair. It wasn't a request. Stella's hand moved slowly toward her new phone, but one of the men was faster. He grabbed it from her hand and crushed it under his boot. "Dehun lied to you tonight," Yuna said. "About my brother. About the video he showed you. About everything." She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "And I'm going to tell you the real truth. The truth about what Dehun really is. The truth about why my brother had to die. And the truth about what he's planning to use you for." Yuna pulled out a folder, similar to the one Dehun had shown Stella, but thicker. "After I tell you everything," Yuna continued, "you're going to have another choice to make. The most important choice of your life." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You can keep working for Dehun and become a monster like him. Or you can help me destroy him before he destroys you." She opened the folder. The first page showed a photo of a young woman. Korean. Beautiful. Dead. "This is the last person who tried to leave Dehun's organization," Yuna said softly. "He told her she could walk away too. He promised her safety." She flipped to the next page. Another photo. Another dead woman. And this is the one before her. Flip. Another photo. Another body. And this one. Stella's hands started shaking violently. "So you see," Yuna said, closing the folder, "when Dehun promises to let you walk away if things get too dangerous," she smiled that cold smile again. "He's lying. Because nobody walks away from Park Dehun alive." Stella's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. The two large men blocked the door. Yuna sat across from her with that folder full of dead women. And Stella's crushed phone lay on the floor, her only connection to Dehun and his protection. "You're lying," Stella said, but her voice shook. "Dehun wouldn't." "Wouldn't what?" "Kill people." Yuna laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "Stella, he's killed dozens. Maybe hundreds. That's what men like him do. But these women," Stella gestured at the folder. "Why would he kill them? Because they knew too much. Because they wanted out. Because they became liabilities." Yuna opened the folder again, forcing Stella to look at the photos. This one was his accountant. She discovered he was laundering money for a terrorist organization. She threatened to go to the police. Yuna flipped to another photo. This one was a translator, like you'll be sometimes. She overheard a conversation about a weapons deal. She tried to run to Japan. Another photo. This one was a nurse. Just like you, Stella. Just like you. Stella felt sick. The woman in the photo looked young, maybe 25. She had kind eyes. Stella wondered if she'd also been desperate. If she'd also made a choice she couldn't take back. "Her name was Jisoo," Yuna said softly. "She worked for Dehun for 6 months. Then she saw him kill someone. She got scared and asked to leave. He said yes. He even threw her a goodbye party." Yuna's voice dropped to a whisper. "They found her body in the Han River 3 days later." "I don't believe you," Stella said, standing up. "You're just trying to turn me against him." One of Yuna's men stepped forward, blocking her path. Stella sat back down quickly. "I don't need to turn you against him," Yuna said. "I just need you to see the truth. Then you'll turn against him yourself." She pulled out more papers from the folder. Bank statements. Police reports. Newspaper clippings about missing persons. "Dehun showed you a video of my brother betraying him, didn't he?" Yuna asked. Stella nodded slowly. "That video was edited. Manipulated. My brother wasn't selling information. He was gathering evidence. He was going to give it to the police." Yuna's eyes filled with tears. "Dehun found out. He had my brother killed and made it look like an accident. Then he spread rumors that my brother was a traitor, so no one would investigate." "How do I know you're not the one lying?" Stella demanded. "How do I know this isn't all fake?" "Because I have nothing to gain from lying to you," Yuna said simply. "But Dehun has everything to lose if you learn the truth." She stood up and moved to the window, looking out at the dark Seoul streets. "He chose you carefully, Stella," Yuna continued. "A foreign woman. No family here. No real connections. Desperate for money. Perfect victim. You're isolated, which makes you easy to control. You're skilled, which makes you useful. And you're vulnerable, which makes you loyal." Stella wanted to argue, but every word Yuna said felt like a knife because it was true. "He'll use you until you become a problem," Yuna said, turning back to face her. "And then he'll get rid of you, just like he got rid of all the others." "Then why are you here?" Stella asked, her voice breaking. "If I'm already dead, why bother warning me?" Because you can still save yourself. Yuna sat down again, her expression intense. And you can help me destroy him in the process. I'm a prosecutor, Yuna said. I've been building a case against Dehun for 2 years. I have evidence of money laundering, weapons trafficking, bribery, and murder. But I don't have enough to convict him. He's too careful, too protected. What does this have to do with me? Stella asked. You're his new doctor, his new confidant. He's going to trust you with things he wouldn't trust anyone else. Yuna leaned forward. You'll see things, hear things, have access to places and information that I could never get to. Understanding dawned on Stella like cold water. You want me to spy on him. I want you to gather evidence. Recordings, documents, proof of his crimes. Yuna's voice was urgent. Help me put him in prison, Stella. Help me make sure he never hurts anyone again. And if I say no? Yuna's expression hardened. Then you're choosing to be his accomplice. And when I finally take him down, and I will, you'll go to prison with him. Stella's hands clenched into fists. So I have no choice again. Either I betray Dehun and risk him killing me, or I refuse and you arrest me. You always have a choice, Stella. But some choices have consequences. The words sounded familiar. Dehun had said almost the exact same thing. Stella closed her eyes, her mind spinning. Who was lying? Who was telling the truth? And how could she possibly know? Then she remembered something. A small detail from the night she'd saved Dehun's life. The men who shot Dehun, Stella said slowly, opening her eyes. Who were they? Yuna blinked, surprised by the question. What? Dehun was shot before I met him. Someone tried to kill him. Who was it? Rival gang, probably. Or one of his business competitors. Why does it matter? Because if you've been investigating him for 2 years, you should know who his enemies are. You should know who shot him. Stella stood up, her fear transforming into something else, clarity. But you don't know, do you? Yuna's face remained calm, but Stella saw it, a tiny flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. You're not a prosecutor, Stella said, her voice growing stronger. Or if you are, you're not here officially. You're here for revenge. Personal revenge. My brother is dead because of him, Yuna said coldly. So yes, it's personal. Does that make my evidence any less real? Maybe. Maybe not. Stella moved toward the door. The 2 men immediately blocked her, but she didn't back down. But it means you're just as dangerous as Dehun. You're just as willing to manipulate me. Use me. Throw me away when I'm not useful anymore. You're making a mistake, Yuna warned. Probably, Stella agreed. But it's my mistake to make. She pulled Yuna's card from her pocket, the one Yuna had given her earlier, and tore it in half. I'm not working for you. I'm not spying for you. I'm not your weapon against Dehun. Then you're a fool, Yuna hissed. And you're going to die. Maybe, Stella said. But at least I'll die making my own choices. The 2 men looked at Yuna, waiting for orders. For a terrible moment, Stella thought Yuna would tell them to kill her right there. Instead, Yuna stood up, collected her folder, and moved toward the door. When he betrays you, Yuna said quietly, don't say I didn't warn you. She left, her men following. The door closed behind them with a soft click. Stella stood alone in her apartment, shaking from head to toe. She'd just made an enemy of a prosecutor. She was committed to working for a man who might be a murderer. And she had no phone to call for help. What had she done? She was still standing there, frozen, when she heard footsteps on the stairs. Heavy footsteps. Multiple people. Stella's heart stopped. Has Yuna come back? Were they going to kill her after all? The door burst open. Jean rushed in first, gun drawn, his eyes scanning the apartment for threats. Behind him came 3 more men, all armed. And behind them, moving carefully because of his healing wound, came Dehun. His eyes found Stella immediately. Are you hurt? Stella shook her head, unable to speak. Dehun crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. The embrace was tight, protective, and completely unexpected. I'm sorry, he murmured into her hair. I'm so sorry. I should have had more men watching you. I should have known she'd come back. Stella stood stiff in his arms, Yuna's words echoing in her mind. He's lying. He'll use you. He'll kill you. But Dehun's heart was pounding against her chest, real fast afraid. And his hands trembled slightly as they held her. If he was acting, he was the best actor Stella had ever seen. She showed me photos, Stella said quietly, of the women you allegedly killed. Women who worked for you and tried to leave. Dehun pulled back, his hands on her shoulders. What women? What photos? She said there was a nurse. My name is Jisoo. She worked for you and you killed her. Something flickered across Daehyun's face. Not guilt, but pain. Old pain. Jisoo was real, he said softly. She did work for me. And she did die. Stella's stomach dropped. But I didn't kill her, Daehyun continued, his voice firm. She was killed by the same people who killed Dr. Kim. The same people who shot me. The same people who sent Yuna to manipulate you tonight. How do I know you're telling the truth? Stella whispered. Daehyun released her and turned to Jean. Show her. Jean pulled out a tablet and opened a file. He handed it to Stella. The screen showed a crime scene photo. Jisoo's body, but not in the Han River like Yuna had said. In an alley. And the wounds, Stella's medical training kicked in automatically, were from multiple stab wounds, not drowning. That's from the police report, Daehyun said. Official. Not edited. Not manipulated. He swiped to the next image. A different woman. Different death. Yuna showed you photos of real women who died, Daehyun explained. But she lied about who killed them. They were all killed by my enemies, people trying to hurt me by destroying everyone I care about. He took the tablet and closed it, his expression haunted. Jisoo wasn't just my nurse. She was my friend. When she died, He stopped, his jaw clenching. I blamed myself for not protecting her better. I swore I'd never let it happen again. He looked at Stella with such raw honesty that her chest ached. That's why I tested you tonight. That's why I'm so paranoid about security. Because I've lost people before, Stella. Good people. People I cared about. His voice dropped to a whisper. I can't lose you too. Stella's mind raced, trying to process everything. Daehyun's story made sense. But so had Yuna's. How could she know who was telling the truth? Then she realized she couldn't know. Not with certainty. Not in this world of lies and manipulation and death. But she could choose who to trust. And trust, Stella was learning, wasn't about knowing someone wouldn't hurt you. It was about believing they wouldn't want to. I need you to promise me something, Stella said. Anything. Promise that you'll always tell me the truth. Even when it's ugly. Even when it's dangerous. No more tests. No more games. I promise, Daehyun said without hesitation. And promise that if I ever want to leave, you'll let me go. Really let me go. This time Daehyun hesitated. His eyes searched her face, looking for something. I can't promise you won't be in danger if you leave, he finally said. My enemies will always see you as connected to me. But I promise I will never hurt you for leaving. And I'll do everything in my power to keep you safe, even from a distance. It wasn't the promise Stella wanted. But it was an honest one. And honesty, she was learning, was more valuable than pretty lies. Okay, Stella said. Then I'm staying. I'm working for you. For real this time. Daehyun's entire face transformed with relief. He pulled her into another embrace, and this time Stella hugged him back. Thank you, he murmured. Thank you for trusting me. Over his shoulder, Stella saw Jean and the other men relax, holstering their weapons. What happens now? Stella asked. Now we move you to a safe house, Daehyun said. Tonight. We can't risk Yuna coming back. What about my things? Jean will pack them. You're coming with me. Within an hour, Stella's entire life was packed into boxes and loaded into black cars. She took one last look at her tiny apartment, the place where she'd been so desperate, so alone, so afraid. She was still afraid, but she wasn't alone anymore. Stella stood in her new apartment, a beautiful space in Gangnam with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture nicer than anything she'd owned in her life. Her mother's medication was paid for a year in advance. Her bank account had more money than she'd ever dreamed of. And every few days, Dehun would show up at her door with some injury or illness that needed treatment. Most of them were minor. A few were serious. One had been life-threatening. But Stella had saved him every time. She was good at her job. And slowly, carefully, she was learning to navigate Dehun's dangerous world. She'd also learned that he'd been telling the truth. He was a criminal, yes. He did terrible things. But he wasn't a monster. He protected his people fiercely. He kept his promises. And when he looked at Stella, it was with something that made her heart beat faster. Something that felt dangerously close to love. She still didn't know if she'd made the right choice. Maybe she'd never know. But she was alive. Her mother was healthy. And for the first time in years, Stella felt like she had a future. Even if that future was complicated, dangerous, and completely insane. Her phone buzzed. A message from Dehun. Dinner tonight? I promise no one will try to kill us. Stella smiled and typed back. You always say that. And you're always wrong. But you come anyway. Yes, I do. Because that's what trust was. Showing up, even when you were scared. Choosing someone, even when you didn't know how the story would end. Stella grabbed her coat and headed for the door. Whatever happened next, she'd face it the same way she'd faced everything else, with courage, compassion, and the stubborn refusal to give up. After all, she'd survived everything so far. She could survive a dinner date with a mob boss. Probably. The end. Thank you so much for watching this story. Did Stella make the right choice? Would you have trusted Dehun or Yuna? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey from desperate nurse to mob doctor, subscribe to this channel to support our growth. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our next Afro K-drama story. We have so many more incredible tales coming your way. Share this video with friends who love romance, suspense, and strong female characters who refuse to be victims. Let's grow this community together. See you in the next story.